Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. Now back to the Forgotten Realms, and my favourite organisation within the Forgotten Realms, which is, well, it was difficult to actually choose. You see, the organisations in the Forgotten Realms are almost as interesting to me as the factions in Planescape. The reason I love the factions is because they're opposed philosophies. The idea that they can control the planes through their minds. It was just such an innovative new idea for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign setting. And boiling it down to the Forgotten Realms, where organisations are very much, I always say human affairs, even though of course elves, dwarves and the like take part in it, but these organisations are kind of like guilds. They're kind of like groups and political parties that may want to further their interests by dominating the world or by enforcing their worldview, whereas the factions in Planescape very rarely come to war, except in faction war. The organisations in the Forgotten Realms are often dominant in entire political regions, and so they are trying to attack each other, they're trying to subvert each other, they're trying to get one over on each other, and so the alliances each organisation has to make to strike against another one always appeals to me. I've always been interested in politicking, in role-playing games, and I find the best way to do this is to get the organisations involved in a game like the Forgotten Realms. And so I really enjoyed the Zhentarim. While the Zhentarim are slightly more black and white than some of the other organisations, well, they're black to the Harper's white, I suppose. I like the idea of a black network. I like the idea that they are this vast criminal organisation that is prepared by hook or by crook to dominate certain parts of the world in the name of Bane and in the name of themselves, of course, that they want to put a stranglehold on merchant trade. They make such good foils in a game, but they also make very good human foils. They have very human desires, very human needs, and so the Zhentarim are a nice and simple in a way, but faceted in another, because there has to be a reason why someone joins a group like the Zhentarim, and it isn't just to go, I'm evil, it's because they want something, often for themselves, sometimes for their family, sometimes for their wider organisation, but always because they want something. And how human a need is that? Now, similarly, I enjoy the Harpers as a good aligned organisation. I prefer the Emerald Enclave, the druidic organisation of Forgotten Realms, for sort of neutral and good side of things. But my favourite organisation is the Red Wizards of Thay. Now, the Red Wizards of Thay are a culture as well as an organisation. They are a people as well as an army. They are desperately intent on making the lives of all those they perceive to be beneath them, that's everyone, pretty much shit. And there's very much a almost... You could just look at Red Wizards and think Stalinism. Although there's very little that's communist about it, despite the fact they are a rolling red menace that wishes to bulldoze Aglarond, Rashamen, and other nations bordering Thay. And similarly, I would say that there's a lot in common between the Red Wizards and Nazis, the SS and so on, because they are very much racially pure, at least up to 3rd edition. The Red Wizards all had to be human, and if you were any race other than human in Thay, you were the lower class. You could never reach the giddy heights of the Red Wizard class. And the Red Wizards, as well as being a prestige class in 3rd edition and an overall sort of subtype that you could impose on a character, is a measure of stature as well. There are wizards of all kinds of stripes following all kinds of spell schools in Thay, but to actually be pronounced a red wizard and to be able to wear the red colours, for if you wear red and you aren't a red wizard, that's an executable offence, or capital offence in Thay. It's it's kind of like an honour system. It's almost like being at university and you finally get to wear your gown, and that sets you above every single other person at university. And the Red Wizards are very much like that. They are a very proud nation. They're a very strong nation. But because they are so consumed by their own pride, by their own selfishness, they find it very hard to work together. Because while they're constantly trying to expand and destroy nations to their west, they are also trying to destroy each other. Thay is a nation that's founded on the different schools of magic, so abjuration, transmutation, evocation, divination, conjuration, necromancy, illusion, and I think I've missed one. I think it's 8 schools of magic. You will have probably got it before me. Enchantment. There you go. Haha. Right. And each of these schools is headed up by a Zolkir, the sort of preeminent Red Wizard of the day, who has been voted by his school to head up that school of magic. Now, looking at 3rd edition and before, the Zolkirs of the different schools of magic were Zaztam for necromancy, Lalara Mediocros for abjuration, Druxus Rim, followed by Samas Kul for transmutation, Asnar Thrul for evocation, Mithrella for illusion, Yalara for, I think, I may have got that. Oh no, Yafil for divination, Naza Real for enchantment, and did I get all of them? Well, the point is, you've got these very strong personalities in charge of different schools of magic, and each of them wants to do a different thing with Thay, because they're all politically equal. Well, Zaztam, or Zhaztam, as some people pronounce it, is undoubtedly the most powerful wizard in Thay, at least the most powerful known wizard in Thay, being a lich and having been a Zolkir for longer than any other Zolkir by being a lich. He doesn't necessarily carry much more power. I'm ignoring the Richard Lee Byers Unholy trilogy, I think it's called, or Undead, Unclean, Unholy, because the Haunted Lands trilogy. While they are actually very, very good Forgotten Realms novels, I will go so far as to say, it kind of changed the political makeup of the Red Wizards, but I'll get to that. The different Zolkirs all have different ideas. There's basically the researchist camp, and there's the expansionist camp, or imperialist camp, and about half the Zolkirs fall in one camp, half of them fall in the other. Some of them want to set up enclaves all around Faerun and basically take over through mercantile means, by making people addicted to all sorts of magical drugs, and by being able to craft magical items and sell them on the market, while others actually want to just enable their armies, magically bolster their armies, and bulldoze their enemies. And so there's a constant civil war, almost, that's very rarely breaks out, but very occasionally simmers to the surface, and so armies owned by the Zolkir of Enchantment may well come into conflict with the armies of the Zolkir of Illusion, because they can't agree on which way to pull Thay, and so it's not a particularly good political organisation. By 3rd edition, the Enclave faction, headed by Druxus Rim, primarily of the School of Transmutation, have won, and while the other Zolkirs still exist, the larger part of Thay is dedicated to building these enclaves around Faerun, and it was a complete change from 2nd edition and the way the Red Wizards were portrayed, and I quite liked that. While I wasn't a big fan of the idea of magical Walmarts, I did like the idea that the Red Wizards finally got together and thought, this can't go on, we're going to destroy our nation from within, we need to agree on a course of action. And at least for the short term, they decided enclaves were the way to go, because slowly, by building enclaves in other cities, essentially like embassies, this territory would be Thavian, but and so they would be beholden to their own laws within it, no one else would be able to come into it without their invitation, etc., etc. They would be able to endear the people to them. They wouldn't commit acts of war, they wouldn't do anything aggressive, they wouldn't do anything crude or rude or impose their culture on anyone else because they are their own little bastion, and in so doing, eventually the people would come to trust them. And so if the Thayans decided one day to invade, they would have all of these little stations around Faerun from which to do it, and they'd already have, in a stranglehold, mercantile trade, and specifically magical trade. Now, by the end of 3.5 and 4th edition, something bad broke out. Jaz Tam's schemes came to fruition, and he intended on building something called a dread circle, or dread circles around Thay, that would essentially make him a god and lay waste to Faerun, turning everything undead, in short. Now, the other Zolkirs, as you'd imagine, rallied against him. I think I missed off Nevron of Conjuration, by the way. And long and the short of it, I won't ruin the novels because they are very, very good novels, but Thay has been changed forever, whilst Faerun potentially has not. So, and definitely the political landscape of Thay has been changed, and the structure of the Red Wizard hierarchy has most certainly been changed. But I have always loved the Red Wizards. I've loved setting my games in Thay, but it still doesn't beat the Dragon Coast for my favourite setting, because I think Red Wizards are most interesting outside of their homeland, in a way. But as the most egregious secret agents wearing great scarlet robes. But at the same time, yeah, I've always found the Red Wizards a fascinating foil, without them being the black and white enemies that the Zhentarim are. Zhentarim, if you see them in your city, you don't want them in your city, for the most part, because you know they're working in the service of Bane or Cyric, most likely. Red Wizards, they may have something to offer. Think of them in the follower of Set kind of a way. The first time will always be free. They'll always have something to give you that you want, and you may well want to go back for more later. And, as long as it works to their best interests, they'll have no reason to harm you, to wish harm upon you, and you can form a friendship with the Red Wizards. But the Red Wizards all have their own plots, and if you want to stick to the 2nd edition, 3rd edition-esque era, they all report, ultimately, to one Zolkir, of their school of wizardry, and then it's down to the Zolkirs what the Red Wizards are doing. So one is only as important as the entire collective of his entire school. And from there, I suppose we go back to the Stalinism thing. In terms of the Zolkirate of Thay, there's a number of very interesting characters in there. Of course, Jaz Tam is a fairly prominent NPC in the Forgotten Realms. I was always very interested in Naza Real, the Zolkir of the School of Enchantment, because unlike the rest of the Red Wizards who keep up the Mulan appearance, they all shave their heads, and most of the other body hair off their body, and tattoo their bodies extensively with magical tattoos. That is how Red Wizards like to appear. Naza Real is quite the opposite. He is a very hairy individual, coming from slave stock, if I recall. He's very handsome. He has a sort of tanned skin, unlike the rest of the Red Wizards, and he really stands out as more of a Zolkir that can be reasoned with. Now, undoubtedly he's evil. He's crafted all sorts of horrible enchantments to do many, many people harm, but in the novel The Symbol's Gift, he strikes up a very interesting relationship with another Forgotten Realms NPC of note, the Symbol. And it's another novel I very much recommend you read, whilst I will admit that what happens in the novel isn't necessarily touched upon ever again. In its own way, that novel has inspired me to do a lot more with Red Wizards than just have them being antagonists constantly, because they are humans, they can be reasoned with, there will always be something you could offer them. And as Naza Real shows in that novel, even the Zolkir of Enchantment isn't necessarily irredeemably evil. And I think all of the Zolkirs in 3rd edition are evil. I think they span lawful evil through to chaotic evil. But I don't think there's any obligation for them to be so. In 3rd edition, I think for the Red Wizard Prestige class, you could be any neutral alignment or evil, but evil is the most common religion in, well, common alignment in Thay, and the most common religion is, interestingly, Kossuth, god of fire, because, well, I'm guessing, because there's lots of volcanoes, actually, in Thay, the Thay Mount being one of them. And they worship, the god of flames, and of course the god of tyranny, Bane, and various other destructive gods, but mostly gods of rulership, gods of outright power, than blatant gods, because a Red Wizard who isn't at least slightly circumspect in his dealings will find himself smashed down by harpers and who knows who else, goodly adventurers, without so much as a by your leave. Anyhow, that is my favourite organisation within the Forgotten Realms, and I thank you very much for watching.